More than 30 years ago, actually, I had the privilege and great opportunity of meeting an abundantly talented violinist on Long Island at a jazz club called Harrington's. His name is Todd Reynolds. And Todd was so popular that he performed at this jazz club many times. He was asked back by popular demand or popular request. And I sort of lost contact with him. And lo and behold, by accident, I discovered that Todd Reynolds is alive and well in our region. And he lives and works out of North Adams, Massachusetts. And Todd, why don't we start with there before we get into all the world of violining? I guess North Adams because of the Berkshires, right?
No, actually North Adams because I've had a relationship with North Adams since 2001, I believe, when Bang on a Can, which is one of my musical families, began doing a residency here every summer at Mass MoCA. So when we began doing that, I began to basically fall in love with the people in the town and the museum, of course.
So, Todd, again, you are, in my mind, one of the best violinists I've ever heard in my lifetime. And I guess the basic question is, how did you come to start with the violin? I mean, and why not say the piano or the trumpet or drums? Why the violin?
Parental pressure and encouragement. There is an old story out there that says that when I came out of the delivery room, my dad said to my mom, "I think he's going to be a violinist." I have this suspicion that Dad just wanted somebody to play with. That's what I suspect. I never considered anything else. I mean, my dad is a pianist. I tried to take piano lessons with my dad. That was such a kind of a miserable failure. But I do have his piano downstairs, which is great. And I can still pick out a melody, but I never really became a pianist, never became very good at it. But I began playing the violin at the age of 4. That makes a good, 53 years I've been playing the violin.
So, I mean, at the age of 4, there must have been like a toy violin, I guess, right?
No, not quite, but you're close. You're really close. So there's something that some folks will be familiar with called the Suzuki Method. There was this Japanese teacher named Shinichi Suzuki who began in Japan a method where he would teach 30 to 40 kids at a time. It was very, it was group oriented. You stood in columns. It was kind of half discipline, half respect, half music. And so the Suzuki Method still remains to this day the primary way of beginning a student on a string instrument. So especially on the violin. And there are many Suzuki teachers out there, and they all go and study, and there's conventions and everything else. And some of them, I've met some Suzuki teachers who are actually kind of, have adopted Zen Buddhism to start with. And so they're very fascinated with Japanese spirituality and aesthetic. So they've taken it on almost a spiritual practice. But that's when you start. Now, I didn't quite start this way. I like to think I did, but I didn't quite because I was 4. There are lots of kids who start Suzuki Method when they're 2.
Really? And
when you do that, what you do is you tape a ruler onto a grape nuts box, and you basically practice, basically hold the grape nuts box in your hand, and you basically put it up and down and up and down. And this is kind of what constitutes a lesson. I'm sure there's candy involved. I just don't remember it. But yeah, I studied in the Suzuki Method for. Actually, I don't really know how long I did it, but I was kind of kicked out because I began to read music too early. And I'm sure I was a precocious, cantankerous kid and said, "Oh, well, that's a B or that's a C," and tried to show off. So I was shown the door.
So were you a natural? I mean, that you just, uh,
I have no idea,
violin
Danny.
became glue, sort of?
No,
No?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it was, I was raised by, I'm an only child, I had a couple of parents who really, really did want to see me do right in the world. So there was a fair amount of something between encouraging and forcing that went on. If I didn't practice enough, threats to take the violin away. It's complicated, but I did. What I began to actually enjoy when I was young was just the idea of being kind of special in what I did. There was nobody else really around me who was playing the violin, so I wanted to be good at it. And I was not a prodigy of any kind. I wasn't playing with orchestras like Midori or any of my, people who ended up becoming my colleagues, who began really concertizing early. That wasn't me. I was just a guy who played in church.
Starting out at 4, I mean, with all of the distractions that youngsters have as they mature, and with school and other activities that compete in a youngster's life. I mean, were there ups and downs where maybe you would put the violin down for a month or two and then revisit it, or was it, even
Oh,
as
no.
a child, a dedication?
That's a rather romantic notion, I must say. No, it wasn't like that at all. I didn't take time off until I was 19 or so. Let me share this with you. It was all thanks to a piece of white cardboard. You remember back in the day when you get your shirts done at the dry cleaners and they would come back to you all folded and there would be like a white piece of cardboard in it that they were folded around. I don't know if you guys had that back east. This was in California, but that's how dry cleaning was for us. And my dad was a high school teacher and a church musician. So he was forever getting his dress shirts, cleaned and laundered. So they would come back and there would be these like legal size pieces of white cardboard. My mom would sit down with a felt tip marker and a ruler and write out my schedule. It began at 4:30 in the morning. By 4:35, I had my teeth brushed. And by 5, I'd had my breakfast and did my first hour of practice between 5 and 6. And my mom or my dad would sit on the couch and kind of monitor and direct me to practice. And to be more exacting than I as a kid would want to be. Well, this was torturous for all of us, as I think, as I remember, although there must have been some joy. And by the time I was 7, I was also doing some theater things. I was actually groomed as a network broadcaster. So I had an hour of practice doing that, and then an hour of practice, narrating, reading, doing tongue twisters, all sorts of stuff like that. So it kind of expanded into something else. But it was always a struggle for my parents to get me to buckle down and do what I wanted to do. But I did it, I did it, and I certainly enjoyed the opportunities that I got to perform early on. And being in front of an audience became something that was a challenge and was fun to a certain extent, and also completely traumatic until I got on in years and learned a little bit more about psychology and how things work.
Now, there must have been a point in your development with the violin where you started to realize that you were thriving, and this was really something you were very good at, and you had the skill. At what point did that discovery come about?
I'm going to have to disappoint you with a non-answer. I do not have any events which really made anything like that clear to me. I'd say that probably in my 13th year, I'd say the closest to that I can come is that in my 13th year, I began studying with Zubin Mehta's father. His name was Meli Mehta, and in LA, he had developed the American Youth Symphony, AYS was what it was called. And he demanded all of his students be in that orchestra. And of course, I had recently become one of his students, so therefore I would be there from 9 to 12 every Saturday morning, and then we would do concerts. So that was the time when I was all of a sudden put into a room with, really good folks. And we were doing real music. This was not anything lightweight. This was symphonies. This was real stuff. And so the AYS and also the Young Musicians Foundation Orchestra, which would play all the Hollywood composers, we would play the Pink Panther theme. Lalo Schifrin would guest. All these great folks from Hollywood. Henry Mancini came, and we played the Pink Panther theme with his sax player. It was great. So it was, I think, in the 13 to 16 year old range, 13 to 17 year old range, when I began to really play with other people a lot in the orchestra and get my wits about me as far as kind of how I fit in. That my recognition that this was, it was always a serious endeavor, but that I had some kind of touch to something bigger.
Now you're transitioning into adulthood, and do you ever think of another occupation, or being an insurance agent or something, or a?
I don't think there was a decision made. I think that I ended up going to school, back east, because I realized that was one way for me to kind of move into a next phase of my life, away from my hometown, away from my parents. Because as an only child, all only children need to get away from their parents, because there's often a kind of a hanging on that takes place. So you do need to go out and make your way in the world. It's a typical Joseph Campbell scenario. So I chose that. And when I chose that, it's just, day after day after day. When you're in college, you don't necessarily think about what your future is. In my third year of college, I actually, on a whim, took an audition for the orchestra that was in town in Rochester. And I was fortunate to win that audition. So I took the place of principal second violin. I'm a college dropout. I never got my bachelor's degree from Eastman. They wouldn't give it to me with experience because I think they needed more residency requirements, something like that. But it was then that I'd done many jobs. I started earning money playing music probably when I was 14, 15, when I started making money playing music. So it wasn't something that I kind of decided. It's something that kind of was my default. And that's I think how it is for a lot of us, when you're studying an instrument seriously and you are a musician seriously, you just kind of follow that thread. It's odd because, if I had experimented with some other ways of making a living, perhaps life would have been easier from a financial basis, because artists aren't supported in our country like they are in others.
Well, obviously, you've done very well for yourself. I believe you're thriving and branching out in the world of violin, and you also, in addition to being a performer, you've been an instructor and a teacher for many years. I believe right now you're on the faculty, right, of the Manhattan School of Music in New York City.
Yes.
So with music instruction, what mentoring or advice would you give? And I asked this question last summer of Itzhak Perlman when, everyone's parents think that their little Tommy or Billy or Susie should be playing the violin and or playing a musical instrument. What advice and guidance can you give to parents about that scenario?
No pressure at all, Danny. You just put me up against Yitzhak. No, naughty you are. I would say, my advice is, would you like my advice to parents or to kids?
Well, maybe to both.
To parents, I would say listen. And to kids, I would say do what you love. I think that especially in this day and age, we can see all the complexities of having done jobs that we hate for many years just to make money. All the complexities of following the art world and following the music world and having big corporations make all the money that you don't get to make as an artist. There's all sorts of complexities in our society between our normal workaday world, which got created after the war, and the art making, kind of the endeavor to have art express our highest good as humanity. I think that every single person has the potential to be a wonderful musician, artist, dancer, mover, theater artist, writer. Everybody has this incredible artistic potential in them. Navigating that as a business is a tricky, tricky thing, and there's not a lot of support to figuring out how to do that well. By the same token, if you feel it, if that's really all you want to do, you should do it. And you make up the rest afterwards, and you find a way to make your life work.
So the dynamic, and you must have seen it many, many times in your career, the youngster that decides that they want to take up the violin, they make the decision, versus the piano or the trumpet or the clarinet or that they're going to try the violin. What's the dynamic in that?
I guess I don't quite understand the question.
Well, where the youngster, the student decides that the violin is their instrument. This is what
they really love the violin. Yeah. And then the follow-up question, what's the dynamic there?
Yeah. On what basis have they made that decision that,
oh my goodness, it could be anything.
Violin versus the piano,
It could be anything. It could be the music that they listen to. It could be people that they've seen around them. It could be just seeing it on screen and being profoundly impacted. The violin and the voice, the viola, the cello, the oboe, what other instruments? The saxophone, right? These are all melismatic, melodic instruments who sing a song from the heart. And some people really respond to that. There are other people who might respond to that, but who respond more to rhythmic things. There you have the piano. Also plenty of melody in the piano, but it is still a percussion instrument. It's hammers hitting strings, right? So the piano or the dulcimer or any other number of instruments. I mean, some people like to hit things and find the way to get beautiful sound out of hitting things. And isn't that awesome? Then there's some people who decide to be engineers. There's a path for everybody, and there are all these different ways of responding to music. So if a person's going to play the violin, they might do it for any one of a number of reasons. What's interesting is that with so many instruments, you just don't have any clue as to the level of difficulty until you approach it. And especially as a child, even then you may not have any idea of the level of difficulty because you just have no reference to something else. But there are certain instruments that are easier to play than others. I think that violin is one of the more taxing ones.
Yes.
That probably should be undertaken at a very early age, and if stuck with, can be a wonderful method of expressing oneself.
Todd, are there older, more mature people in today's world that decide that they'd like to play the violin, someone in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, or 60s, and they want to take it up?
Sure, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a heavy lift.
It's
a heavy lift.
More than the youngster.
Oh, really, when we get into questions like that, I'm not so sure that there is an answer to that, let alone if I'm qualified to answer that. I don't have enough experience. But I'd say that once again, the same answer applies, though. I think one of the if there's anything that we've been infected with in our particular society, in music and in other cases as well, it's the disease of perfectionism. So if somebody wants to take up the violin and wants to learn something, I don't care what a lift it is, what kind of an into the wind walk it might be. If somebody wants to try that, I think it's awesome, and they should. And hopefully they'll find somebody to take care of them and support them as a mentor or teacher in that. Or maybe there's ways of just learning from YouTube, because we can all learn a whole lot from YouTube these days.
That was my next question. I mean, lessons today, there seems to be a preponderance of lessons that are given on the internet and through the YouTube and through digital streaming and Zoom. Are you a believer in that, or not really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I don't like to teach violin. That's my problem. It's not a problem. It's my it's my good fortune. I'm not so concerned with teaching people violin as I'm concerned with teaching them how to express themselves in addition to their chosen instrument. So if one visits toddreynolds.com, you'll find an educational portal there. My partner Isabel and I have an organization called Amplify This. We started it in early COVID. And part of it are classes on leveling up your virtual presence, making yourself sound good and look good online, and being able to teach effectively online. So we help telehealth professionals. We help anybody essentially who wants to present or teach or offer anything up online. So that's one of the things that we teach. I also, you can't see it right this minute, but around me is my recording studio. And so I have a lot of things to teach from an electronics and production and engineering profession as well. So one of the courses that we're about to open up in the next couple of months is a home recording studio course where people can come and learn to build their own home recording studio and all the things that takes. And some software packages that I use to make my music. One is called Ableton Live. It's a wonderful program which allows you to record and produce yourself kind of in real time. So I do a lot of that. So those types of teaching and mentoring and coaching programs are what I'm engaged in, rather than teaching violin. I know lots of great violin teachers who are offering great classes. In fact, there's even one of the famous violin teachers from Juilliard who is offering, he basically posts not lessons, but demonstrations on LinkedIn.
One more quick question.
Sure.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
It's the N train. Depending upon where you come from, I used to live in Sunnyside, Queens, so it would always be the 7 train to Queensboro Plaza. Then I'd get on the N train or the
You
W.
were supposed
And
to say practice. You were supposed to say practice.
well, I never did any of that, and I play at Carnegie Hall. So you'd like to share something with your audience, and that's great. I would love that too. If anybody I think what you will probably show them is a segment from one of my latest live streams. And if you go to toddreynolds.live, you can actually sign up for my mailing list right there. And if you follow me on Facebook or YouTube or any of the social media sites, you'll find me. And I go live pretty much every 2 weeks with a crew in the background of 5 international folks. My audio guy is in Manila, the Philippines. Got one of our directors and switchers and cutters, Brian, who's in Sydney, Australia. My director, Aaron Husledge, is in North Carolina, and you'll see some incredible video art there, both from my longtime colleague Luc Dubois and Tlaloc Lopez Waterman. So it's like this kind of international crew, which backs me up. They're all in my house, controlling all of my cameras. And, kind of working the magic while I get to make music. So that's kind of an exciting thing. And you'll find those things on my YouTube channel, which is, youtube.com/Todd Reynolds. That's pretty simple. But yeah, if you want to show them some of that would be awesome.
Todd Reynolds, thank you for being with us. I hope we can do part 2 sometime. And again, you're in for a real treat hearing Todd Reynolds' wonderful violin music.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for having me.
Danny Frank, GNAT-TV.